You wanted to start doing content with other players in the Elder Scrolls Online. Awesome! This playlist is going to go over some basics for group content, such as dungeons and trials. Some of the videos will cover unstated rules among the community, while others are tips that I wish I had learned sooner. This is not going to be an all-inclusive list, but more of a collection of tips. This playlist and others on the channel will continue to expand on topics to help improve your Elder Scrolls Online experience. And remember, if you have any questions, please do comment them and try to get back to as many as I can. In ESO, there is the concept of play the way you want, which is certainly true for most of the game. In group content though, when you slot yourself as a particular role, there are some unstated expectations of what you should be bringing to the team. I will be doing a deeper dive into roles later, but the summary of key role features for the 3 roles in ESO are as follows. Tanks need to be able to taunt enemies, group up adds, and focus on buffing teammates and debuffing enemies. Healer need to be able to heal teammates, buff teammates, and debuff enemies. Damage dealers, typically referred to as DPS in the ESO community, focus on doing damage. When playing in group content in ESO, it is important to change your in-game role to match what you're doing in group content. To do this in-game, navigate to the Group tab. On PC, the default way to access this is by pressing P. Once there, you will see these 3 icons. The first with the sword and shield is the tank role. The second with a star is the healer icon, and the third with the crossed sword and staff is the DPS role. To swap between the roles, you just click the desired role. There is no cooldown between swapping roles, but do note that different roles come with different responsibilities in group content. In ESO, the responsibility of who resurrects in group content is an unstated rule. The preference is DPS, then healer, then tank. This order of preference stems from the following thought. If the tank tries to resurrect, this locks them into a non-blocking position and holding still for 6 seconds, while still maintaining taunt of the boss. They will probably get killed or get interrupted. If the healer tries to resurrect, they lock themselves out of healing for 6 seconds, which could potentially lead to others dying due to not receiving heals. If a DPS resurrects, they lock themselves out of doing damage for 6 seconds. Healers can focus heals on them to keep them safe, and tanks can keep any enemies away from them, therefore meaning the safest way to get someone resurrected is with a DPS. So, you have started doing some group content in ESO, but just like not knowing what to do with your hands. When getting a picture taken, you don't quite know where you are supposed to put yourself in group content. In most content, the positioning is as follows. The tank will taunt and hold the boss relative to the boss. DPS need to be on the boss's butt relative to the boss. Healers need to be behind the DPS, but still close enough to the tank for them to receive consistent heals. This formation allows for buffs from the tanks and healers to hit the DPS and points the boss away from group. Of course, this is a general formation recommendation. Knowing the mechanics of a fight might change the formation for positioning, but when in doubt, this formation is a safe bet. When going into an encounter with a group, an unstated rule in ESO is let the tank be the first to start the encounter. Whether this be a boss fight or a group of smaller enemies, it is proper group content etiquette and allows for cleaner pulls. If someone not the tank runs in first, the boss is likely to hit someone that is not the tank, due to the AI of the enemies randomly picking a target when there is no taunt on them. An encounter with multiple enemies, allowing your tank to pull first ensures they can clearly taunt the enemies of high danger before the group gets shuffled up. It can even allow a tank to more easily group and snare enemies. So be kind to your tank and let them start the pulls at their pace. In ESO, dungeons and trials are filled with treasure chests. Unlike overland chests, chests in group content can be looted by everyone in group, and everyone has a unique instance of loot. These chests have a chance to contain the gear sets of that particular group content. A common etiquette in ESO is to type in group chat when you find a chest, something as simple as chest in chat, and then standing there until your teammates see you will suffice. Not everyone is going to loot the chest, but if you look at your map and see someone coming back to loot, just stand by the chest and maybe even attack at it a few times to show where it is at. Every dungeon in ESO has a quest that can be picked up at the beginning of the instance. Upon completion, you get a skill point and a piece of gear. Usually in ESO, if you are with the pickup group and want to get really into the story of a dungeon, I recommend not picking the quest up. This is because you might feel pressured to rush through the story with a group of other players who just want to complete the dungeon as quickly as possible. If you don't care about the story and just want the extra skill point, grab it and type in group chat something along the lines of doing the quest. In certain dungeons, there are extra bosses you might need to do for the quest. This is why it can be helpful to let your teammates know. In ESO, you might see players offering baby random normals or easy random normals. What is this all about? In ESO, a character that is below level 45 is typically referred to as a baby character, and players will offer them in guild or zone chats for easy random normals. This is due to the fact that in ESO's dungeon queue system, if you have a player in group below level 45, your group will not get a DLC dungeon. The queue system will only select from the dungeons that all players in the group can participate in. And generally, players agree that base game dungeons are easier than DLC dungeons. With this knowledge, don't be afraid to start group content as soon as you turn level 10. Veteran players like myself love easy random normals with baby characters. When doing group content in ESO, all players should use buff food. Buff food comes in the form of food or drink consumables. This is just as important as wearing gear and is part of your build. Buff food can provide an increase to maximum resource pools of health, stamina, or magicka, or increase your regeneration of health, stamina, or magicka. No one buff food can increase everything, therefore you have to choose which aspects you want. When deciding what to use, I recommend looking up builds for your desired class and role, and see what other content creators recommend. There are hundreds of recipes in ESO, making choosing potentially overwhelming to those unfamiliar to all the options. When in doubt, going with a food that gives you more maximum health, more maximum resource, and more resource generation is always a solid choice. When doing group content in ESO, players should use potions like skills. Potions might have a burst of resources, but they also can help with resource regeneration, therefore preventing you from running out in the first place. Think of them as preventative instead of reactionary. To use potions in combat, make sure to equip them to your quick slot as follows. Which potion type to use can be daunting with all the options, but a great start are the free try restoration potions you get for log and rewards. You don't have to worry about crafting potions until you want to really get into harder content. Just getting in the habit of having some on your person and in your quick slot is a great first step. Did you know there are passives you can unlock to increase the amount of time your food and potions last? Under the provisioning skill line, there is the Gourmand passive that adds up to 20 minutes to the duration of any eaten food, and the Connoisseur passive that adds up to 20 minutes to the duration of any consumed drink. Additionally, in the Craft Champion point tree, there is the Slottable Star Rationing that will add up to 30 additional minutes to the duration of any food or drink that increases your character stats. Under the Alchemy skill line, there is the Medicinal Use passive that when using potions resulting effects last up to 30% longer. While you don't have to have these to get the benefits of consumables, they are something to work towards unlocking. In ESO, buffs and debuffs are temporary character effects applied by some abilities, gear sets, or potions. Buffs are applied to yourself or your allies, and debuffs are applied to enemies. Two buffs or debuffs with the same name will not stack, though a major and minor of the same type will. Understanding this core concept will help with group optimization. I plan to delve into the topic further in future role-specific videos, but for now, let's look at a couple examples. Example 1. In a trial, if one healer was wearing spell power Cure and the other healer Rollerly, both healers are applying the same buff of Major Courage, making one of the sets redundant. Example 2. We have a healer wearing spell power Cure and a tank wearing Yulnokrin, meaning the group is now getting both Major and Minor Courage because the Major and Minor stack. In ESO, buffs can be stacked with a bit of coordination within the group. Many buffs can go towards the same goal. To explain this, let me show an example of buffs for weapon and spell damage. Let's start with Spell Power Cure, which gives Major Courage, which is 430 weapon and spell damage. Then add Yulnokrin for Minor Courage, which adds 215 weapon and spell damage. Then let's add Powerful Assault to add 289 weapon and spell damage. Then let's add Pearlescent Ward to add up to 170 weapon and spell damage. Additionally, let's add the Mythic Spalder to give the buff Aura of Pry for an additional 260 weapon and spell damage. This totals to an increase of 1364 weapon and spell damage from 5 unique buff sources. This is more a theory example, and not an exact example of what to expect to see in group content. This is just to demonstrate how it is possible to stack multiple sources for the same buff goal of weapon and spell damage. And there you have it, 13 quick tips for group content in ESO. Remember, if you have any more questions, please do comment them down below. I look forward to seeing you all again for more ESO content.